Greetings, Captains! I am Yusril, and this is, once again, a look at the Andorian escorts. Normally I don't do follow-ups on first impression videos. There's no second chance to make a first impression, as the cliché goes. But over the week and a bit since release, Cryptic have run out a series of changes to the Andorian ships in response to the criticism being levelled at them. So, in this case, and just for once, it does seem fair to revisit the topic. I'll start with a couple of things I didn't cover in the original video, mostly because I was getting too angry. The first of these is the Andorian phasers, which unlock at the dilithium store when you buy one of the escorts. Their Mark 11 have 2 accuracy and 1 damage boost, and cost just shy of 23,000 dilithium each. Oh, and they shoot blue pew-pew instead of orange. The modifiers are surprisingly good for store-bought weapons, and if you're looking to equip a ship, any ship, given that all the usual weapon classes are available, then these are among the best of the readily obtainable choices. There's better available. Advanced fleet weapons edge these out by virtue of sheer brute force, and the random loot gods might occasionally be kind and drop Mark 12s with double or even triple accuracy modifiers, but you'll need to be stunningly lucky in a decently provisioned fleet, or else prepare to pay ruinous amounts on the exchange to get a significant improvement on the Andorian weapons. What's less impressive, however, is the Andorian bridge. It's based on the sets used for the original Kumari in Enterprise, and is generally a faithful reconstruction, although it lacks most of the incidental props that we saw in the show, particularly in the Ready Room. The downside of all of this is that it's a faithful reconstruction of a set that was built on a limited budget for a few scenes in a couple of episodes, and dear God Emperor, it shows. Compare the bridges that came with the Odyssey, be it the free Christmas version from 2011 or the C-Store version that came later, and weep at the difference in detail. I understand the need to keep the Andorian aesthetic, but I can't help but think that the set designers should have been handed a brief saying, here's your starting point, now modernise it and add detail, instead of exact copy, thanks, bye. And then there's the texture quality. If, looking at this video, you are suspecting that I left the graphics on low quality purely to give me something to criticise, no, I didn't. This is being filmed at 1920 by 1080 with all the in-game settings at their maximum. It really does look this bad. As far as mechanical changes go, Cryptic fixed up the bug with shield and hull healing, namely that heals were coming in way too weak when used on Andorian vessels. These now work properly, and any remaining squishiness is by design. I did note in my first video that I considered the line, particularly the Kumari, to have traded far too much durability for what felt like a marginal increase in firepower, and this remains my opinion, because while the bug has been fixed, the design numbers haven't, and I deliberately wasn't trying to take the bug into account when I made my original criticisms. From a gunnery standpoint, the wing cannon overload and tachyon burst abilities no longer share a 15-second cooldown with rapid fire and scatter volley. This is undoubtedly a good thing, since it made little sense for a ship line designed around cannons and damage to have its abilities not merely failing to synergize, but actively interfering with each other. Much the same goes for the reduction in Overload's charge cycle, and thus its lockout of all your other energy weapons from 4 seconds to 2. I still don't understand the logic behind that lockout, but at least reducing it cuts down on the notion that these ships are tripping over themselves. The damage from Overload also got a boost, but there's a little curiosity here. According to the tooltip, Overload derives no benefit from phaser relays, despite regular wing cannon shots doing so. This might just be a display bug, but those tooltip values are calculated on the fly by the game. Against that, I've noticed that Overload does tend to produce much higher numbers than the tooltip suggests, so that could well be a bug that needs some attention. Overload's also had a graphics tweak, which, while not strictly necessary, is certainly much prettier than the original and is welcome. Tachyon Burst has also had a boost. It's now on a mutual 30-second cooldown with Overload, but it has an additional effect. 25% increased shield damage to the target for a brief period, with a bonus 5% for each wing cannon platform deployed and firing if you have the 3-set bonus. So the tactic here is fairly simple. Open a strafing run with Tachyon Burst and Rapid Fire, channel Chekhov there for a second, and then use Overload once the cooldown has ended, if the victim is somehow still alive. Wing cannon platforms have been buffed as well. They now have 25% extra shields on hull, so they're less likely to fry the moment anyone points an area of effect attack at you. I've noticed, however, that their targeting seems to have gone a little bit wild. Several times I've noticed the platforms fire at a target that the wing cannons couldn't bear on, and I'd swear blind a couple of times that they even fired at targets I didn't have under attack. Something that is very definitely not supposed to happen. So, have I changed my opinion? A little. The Andorian escorts aren't quite the steaming piles they were at release, but neither are they top dog as far as escorts are concerned. That accolade still goes to the Jem'Hadar attack ship, but that's virtually unobtainable at the moment. Several of the fleet escorts, the Patrol, Advanced, Tactical and Carrier, and the Chimera, if you don't mind playing with a bag over your head, are slugging it out for second, depending on personal preferences, and the Andorians seem to be scrapping over third with the baseline Armitage and probably the Steamrunner. So, given that the probable best escort is almost impossible to get hold of, the second best variously require you to be in a fleet, why aren't you, and have access to provisioning or have a lifetime sub or 1,000 days of gold subscription in the case of the Chimera, then if you don't have either of those, the Andorian escorts are a semi-decent choice, except that of course the Armitage and the Steamrunner are both considerably cheaper. Possible best of the rest might constitute damnation with faint praise, but it's the best verdict I can give these ships, especially given that the competition is almost universally cheaper than the Andorians. And yes, I still consider Cryptic's prices to be excessive. It's not really valid to just pull numbers out of thin air, so let's grab something for comparison. PlanetSide 2, I think. New weapons there cost about $7 to $10, and it's worth noting that buying with certs really is free in PlanetSide 2, as opposed to just using someone else's money a la the Dilithium exchange. Given that your weapon is the primary driver of your playstyle in PlanetSide 2, just as your ship class is in Star Trek Online, that's an interesting comparison, not quite direct, but close, and it's one that doesn't go well for Cryptic. On another point, it's nice to see a developer listening to feedback other than shut up and take my money, but the whole affair does make me wonder about their testing process. Cryptic rarely put ships onto the test service before their C-store release, which is their privilege, but on this occasion that practice has bitten them on the arse, because they've been hit by a series of problems that should have been caught before these ships saw holodeck, most notably the straight-up bugs with heel scaling. Final verdict? Final verdict? Still a don't buy, I think. If you're a power gamer, then there are better and cheaper ships available, the Jem'Hadar, the fleet escorts, etc. If you're on a budget, then there are cheaper and better ships available. And if you're after a good time outside Star Trek Online completely, remember in my original video for these that I said that Crisis 3 was $31.99 at Tesco, which, if you're not familiar with the UK, Tesco is a major supermarket chain, and used that as a comparison, well, Tesco have cut their price on Crisis. It's now £30, and Heart of the Swarm is being advertised at $26. Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been Yuzrol. That was a second brief look at the Andorian escorts, and I'm off to add video games to my grocery shopping. I'll see you next time.